While everyone was arguing about the price of XRP this week, something happened that most people completely missed. A Japanese payment company just launched on the XRP ledger specifically to eliminate what they're calling the last-mile friction in global trade finance. A Federal Reserve policy analyst confirmed that crypto firms will gain access to Fed master accounts, and Ripple is next in line. And if you think 7-day trading is a distant dream, this past weekend just proved that it is not. The entire hedge fund industry was shaken. Let me be clear, the signal is screaming, but it is only visible to those who are actually looking beyond the price chart. Today, we pull back the curtain. Welcome back. I'm your crypto Regency, not your hype man. On this channel, we do not chase price. We decode architecture. If this is your first time here, what you're about to hear is not speculation. It is a structural breakdown of what is being built right now, today, in real time. Let's get into it. Let's start with the hard truth. Most retail investors are staring at the wrong thing. Every single day, the conversation revolves around one question. Why hasn't XRP pumped yet? And I understand it. I do. But that question reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of what is actually happening. Here is the hidden mechanism. The global financial system does not move like a stock ticker. It moves like tectonic plates, slowly, silently, and then all at once. And what we are watching right now, if you know where to look, is the final assembly of an entirely new monetary infrastructure. Think about what the last mile problem actually is. SWIFT, the system that has dominated cross-border payments for 50 years, does not settle. People forget this. SWIFT is just messaging. It sends an instruction from Bank A to Bank B, and then you are left with a chain of correspondent banks, frozen nostro-vostro accounts, and a settlement window that can take anywhere from 1 to 5 business days. That $27 trillion sitting locked in nostro accounts around the world right now, that is dead capital. It earns nothing. It moves nothing. It exists purely to satisfy the inefficiency of a legacy system. This is the problem that XRP was engineered to solve. Not from the outside, from the inside. And if you want proof that traditional finance knows this, look at what just launched this week. A Japanese company called LightUp just announced a new trade finance platform built on the XRP ledger. And their specific language is what matters here. They are using XRP Ledger's native escrow functionality to lock funds until all predefined consensus conditions are satisfied, eliminating the ability of any single participant to unilaterally block or divert a payment. Read that again slowly. No single participant can block or divert the payment. That is not a feature of SWIFT. That is not a feature of ACH. That is a design architecture that only exists on a decentralized ledger. This is not a startup experiment. This is a traditional finance institution choosing blockchain rails specifically because they solve a problem that legacy systems have never been able to solve. The foundation is not being built anymore. It is being activated. Now let's talk about numbers. Because I have heard every argument against XRP's price potential, and every single one of them collapses under basic math. The World Economic Forum has published a projection: $867 trillion in global assets to be tokenized by 2030. Not a crypto Twitter account, not a YouTuber, the World Economic Forum. And even Brad Garlinghouse, the CEO of Ripple, has been measured in his own estimates, citing $10 trillion flowing into the digital asset custody market by 2030. But here is where retail investors stop reading. They hear those numbers and they think, okay, but how much of that actually goes into XRP? And that is the right question. XRP has a fixed supply of 100 billion tokens. That is the maximum. It will never change. Of that 100 billion, roughly 55 to 57 billion is currently circulating. The rest sits in Ripple's escrow, and the majority of what is released monthly gets relocked. Now factor in institutional cold storage that does not return to market. Factor in lost wallets. Factor in long-term holders who have no intention of selling at $3. Think about this logically. If $10 trillion flows into the XRP ledger ecosystem and needs to use XRP as the bridge currency for cross-border settlements, even at the current circulating supply, you are looking at a price target that makes today's levels look like a rounding error. That is not a moonboy fantasy. That is liquidity math applied to a fixed supply asset. And here is the one calculation people never actually sit with. Cross-border payments alone represent $150 trillion annually. The Forex market turns over $7.5 trillion every single day. If XRP captures just 1% of daily Forex volume as a bridge asset, that is $75 billion in daily demand, flowing through approximately 55 billion tokens. The math does not need to be aggressive to produce numbers that are dramatic. This isn't a prediction, it is a requirement. For a payment network to use XRP as a real-time bridge asset at scale, the price has to reflect the liquidity demand. A $3 XRP cannot bridge trillion-dollar payment corridors without creating catastrophic slippage. The institutions building on this network understand this. That is not an accident. The question is not whether the math works. The question is whether you understand it before the window closes. While retail was watching the price, institutions were reading the policy documents. This week, an analyst at TD Cowen put out a note, and I want you to hear this clearly because it is significant. Their view is that crypto entities will gain access to Federal Reserve master accounts, and that Ripple is next in line. Banks will fight it. They will litigate. They will lobby. But TD Cowen is calling it inevitable. Ask yourself this brutal question. Does a firm like TD Cowen, an institutional research house that serves hedge funds and asset managers, issue a public note saying Ripple is next in line for a Fed master account without doing the underlying due diligence? No. That is not how institutional research works. They are not guessing. They are reporting what their regulatory contacts are telling them. And pair that with this. Ripple Prime clients now have direct access to the full suite of Coinbase derivatives contracts, cleared through NovaClear. That includes XRP futures, institutional-grade, cleared derivatives. This is not a retail product. This is the infrastructure that hedge funds, prop desks, and asset managers need before they take a meaningful position. You do not build the derivatives layer for a network you believe is going away. Then look at the OCC, Federal Reserve, and FDIC joint FAQ on the capital treatment of tokenized securities. Their official position: tokenized assets should be treated identically to non-tokenized assets under capital rules. Technology neutral. That language, technology neutral, is the signal that the regulatory moat that was previously used to disadvantage blockchain-based assets has been officially removed at the federal banking level. Smart money does not move on rumors. It moves when legal frameworks are confirmed. We just got confirmation at the banking regulator level. And while the crowd is focused on whether the stablecoin bill passes before the midterms, the foundational regulatory architecture underneath tokenized assets and digital payments was just quietly and officially updated. The architects are not waiting. They are building, and they have been building in plain sight for years. Let me map out exactly what the next 18 months look like, because the catalysts are not abstract anymore. They have names and dates. First, the stablecoin legislation. Yes, it is stalled. Yes, the banks are fighting it. But the calendar pressure is real on both sides. This bill either gets done in the next legislative window, or it gets pushed 6 to 12 months, right into an election cycle where every candidate will be positioning on crypto. Either way, clarity comes. The only variable is timing. Second, Fed Master Account access. When a crypto firm receives a Fed Master Account, it gains direct access to the Federal Reserve payment system. That is not a minor upgrade. That is a structural integration into the backbone of US dollar settlement. When that moment arrives for Ripple, the ODL corridor, on-demand liquidity, plugs directly into the Fed's rails. The last wall comes down. Third, the 7-day trading reality. This past weekend proved it. When a macro event hit, hedge funds needed to react, and the only venues open were crypto. Matt Hogan said it clearly. When you need to react, and the choice is between reacting and not reacting, you will choose reacting 100 times out of 100. Every crisis accelerates the timeline toward continuous market operation. XRP was built for exactly that environment. When the stablecoin bill passes, when the master account is granted, and when 7-day settlement becomes the norm, those 3 events converging is not a prediction. The fuse is already lit. Let me talk about access, because this window is not permanent. Exchange reserves for XRP are not growing. They are declining. Tokens are moving off exchanges into cold storage, into institutional custody products, into Ripple's own lockup structures. When a token enters a multi-signature institutional vault, it does not come back to market for a 10% gain. That capital is positioned for a generational move, or it is being used as settlement infrastructure. Either way, it does not return to the open market at these prices. We are moving from an era of abundance to an era of scarcity, and most retail participants will not recognize this transition until they are on the wrong side of it. Think about what happens the moment regulatory clarity lands. The risk premium that currently suppresses XRP's price, the uncertainty premium, the what-if Ripple loses premium, that evaporates instantly. It does not fade, it does not gradually adjust, the price gaps. And institutional capital that has been sitting on the sideline, waiting for that green light, does not trickle in. It floods in. When the final switch is flipped, the retail access window will close faster than most people are prepared for. You will not be able to buy whole tokens at double digits. The price will move before you have time to react. The institutions have spent years creating noise, creating doubt, creating confusion, specifically designed to shake out the impatient. The exit liquidity of the confused funds the entry of the informed. That is how this market has always worked. The only question is which side of that trade you are on. I know what some of you are feeling right now. You have been hearing soon for a long time. You are watching other assets move, while XRP consolidates. And there are days when it feels impossible to hold conviction. I want to address that directly. Being early feels exactly like being wrong, right up until the moment reality catches up with the structure. Look at what is happening in the background while the price stays flat. A Japanese payment company just chose the XRP ledger over every other available option for their trade finance infrastructure. Federal Reserve master account access is being called inevitable by institutional research firms. The OCC just made tokenized assets technology neutral. Coinbase derivatives, institutional grade, now include XRP futures. Ripple has made acquisitions that position them for custody, CBDC infrastructure, and institutional trading all under one roof. That is not the profile of an asset that is being left behind. That is the profile of an asset in the final stage of infrastructure assembly before activation. The red candles and the sideways price are not evidence that you are wrong. They are the silence of a predator waiting to strike. The signal has never been stronger, but signals require patience to become prophets. The question is not whether the system completes. The question is, who is still positioned when it does? Here is the summary. One sentence. The entire global financial system is being replumbed, and the pipes run through the XRP ledger. Every rail being built in Japan, every regulatory framework being cleared in Washington, every institutional custody product coming to market, every Fed master account discussion, it all converges on the same infrastructure. You are either positioned for that convergence or you are not. If you are someone who actually reads the policy documents, who tracks the on-chain data, who understands what technology-neutral capital rules mean, drop a comment below. I want to see who in this community is actually paying attention. In a market fueled by emotion and noise, we thrive on data and composure. Stay patient, stay rational, and as always, we do not wait for the future.